speaker right now.
Thanks, Lyra. So welcome and happy Sabbath, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. And a special thank you for joining us for Pastor Charles and family and Efren. Thank you for joining us. And so I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. He's joining us from the Pearl of Africa, Uganda, Pastor Charles Aguilar. And for those who may not know him, I feel like everybody here is pretty familiar with him, though. He was a youth pastor of Vancouver Filipino SDA Church, and he also served as a school chaplain, pastor, and communication director under the BC Conference. And it seems like such a short time ago that we found out that the Aguilars are going to move to Uganda, but it was actually 4 years ago. So it's been a while now. So thank you so much once again, Pastor Charles, for sharing your time with us, and especially since I believe it's like 10 o'clock p.m. there. And I pray that we will be blessed by your message today.
Happy Sabbath, everybody. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me well? Just indicate in the chat there so that I can hear some feedback. Just checking how do I share screen? Just let me check if I can do share screen. Give me a few minutes here. Let me see and play. Let me know if you can see my topic right up to the front. Just use the chat. Excellent.
Yes, I can see it.
All right. Happy Sabbath, everybody. Glad to see you all. Greetings from the Pearl of Africa. I am currently single at the moment. My wife and my children are all back in Vancouver. They took the repatriation flight back to Vancouver. Canada, the government of Canada worked with the Ugandan government to repatriate Canadians in East Africa during lockdown. And the tickets were expensive, but it's always good to be back home, especially with our system. Our healthcare system is really solid. I'm proud to be Canadian here in East Africa, and just all the things that Canada offers. It's just amazing. So I'm glad that they're back in Vancouver, North Van. They are safe, and they are looking forward to spend good time there. And I believe they are watching the TV at the moment. And but I bring you greetings from East Africa. In Uganda, our cases is not as bad as the US or even Canada. As of Friday, we only had 19 deaths and about 1,000 positive with COVID-19. But you also have to put in consideration that we don't have any good systems, health systems in Uganda. We have about one main hospital that does the testing, and the rest are stuff. The government has converted our stadium, which is about 2 kilometers away from where ADRA is or where we live. The government has converted it into a 4,000 bed hospital, just getting ready for the outbreak that's going to happen anytime soon. So that's where we are at in Uganda. But anyway, I would like to share with you today the purpose of end time prophecy, which is based on Matthew 24 to 25. And again, before I start, we could probably bow our heads for prayer. Dear Father, as we go through this study, may your Holy Spirit be with us, be with the presentation that I'm about to present. Help us to interact, help us to put some thoughts on it. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Again, with this COVID thing, it has really brought a lot of issues and questions and challenges that we have, especially on Facebook, regarding the Adventist Church and prophecy, where we are at. And it is part of our human beings. We are always curious about what is happening in the world today. COVID-19, this pandemic has changed a lot of lives. I mean, it's people are going to funerals without any friends around. I mean, it's just terrible. In Brazil, I've heard of a story where where the father died, and then the son died, and then I mean it's like so many deaths within families. I don't even know how people would cope with such things. And people are asking, where are we in the timeline in this world? What is the purpose of our prophecy? Are we living in the world's end time in history? How do we respond as Christians? How do we respond as Adventists? And really, what is the purpose of prophecy? And in this case, Matthew 24:25. What is really Jesus trying to teach here? In this context, we can say that Jesus was probably sitting in the Mount of Olives, and the disciples came to him privately, and they ask, tell us. Disciples are saying, when will the end happen? When will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? So the disciples were as curious as we are in this day and age as well. I mean, you got to put into consideration that when the disciples, when Jesus was living in Palestine, walking the Palestinian grounds right there, they were living under Roman Empire. Basically, they were taxed up to 80%. They were. I would say they would be persecuted as well. They didn't live a good life. So in that end, the Jews were looking for a Messiah that could save them from the Romans. And so the disciples were just as curious, saying, when is this all going to stop? Like, when will this end? So Jesus replied in 24 verses 4 and 5, and Jesus says, watch out that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, claiming that I am Christ, and will deceive many. The disciples were probably excited, and they were probably saying to themselves, oh great, Jesus now is going to tell us what's going to happen. The events that are coming that will lead to the end. And then they will probably say, then we will know how to get ready. But Jesus went on verse 6. And Jesus says, you will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. For such things must happen, and then the end will come right away. Is that what the text actually says? I need to read some feedback on the chat room. So when I ask a question, make sure that your thumbs are typing as well. So I need to hear some feedback, or I need to see some. I need to hear feedback. Are you reading the same text as I am? Okay, I hear Inspire Ministries recording account. So what does the text actually say? Exactly. This is the text right here. Thank you, Kai. The text reads, you will hear wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. The end is still to come. It was quite fascinating when this COVID-19 came in, and I'm checking on my friends on Facebook, especially the ones in the Philippines, and they're talking about 5G, and they're talking about pandemic. You're talking about all of these conspiracy theories about Bill Gates and who else, Pierre? I know we were discussing this sometime. I mean, all of these things taking away our focus on what prophecy is about. Instead of focusing on Jesus, we're focusing about 5G. I don't even know what 5G is about and how 5G is so bad in China. And what else, Pierre? I mean, it is frustrating. Like, I wish I have the time but to engage these people, but I know they won't change their minds. So, I mean, all of these things, a lot of conspiracy theories. And people are alarmed and getting our focus on Jesus and his prophecies. And the last line basically reads in the Greek, it says, the end is not yet. So Jesus knows that his disciples will experience all of this rumors of wars and wars. Like right now, we are in an invisible war, as what the Americans would say. This COVID-19. But Jesus' messages to the disciples is: do not be alarmed. Don't be shaken by the current events. All of these things are going to happen, but they don't necessarily mean that the end is actually at hand. So
Sir Charles,
Jesus continued, nations will rise against nations, kingdom against kingdom. Talking about Trump right now, trying to declare war with China and all of these other nations. There will be famines, earthquakes in various places. All of these things are the beginning of birth pains. I don't know if you've heard about the locusts in East Africa. Right now, we're dealing with the pandemic. We're dealing with food shortages. Locusts are all over the East Africa, from Somalia, Kenya, Uganda, all the way to South Sudan. We're dealing with floods. We're dealing with food shortages. I mean, ADRA works with refugees right now, and the United Nations World Food Program basically said, we don't have money. We don't have money to sustain the refugees. So instead of giving them three meals a day, they can only eat one meal every 2 days.
Pastor Charles, excuse. Pastor
Yes.
Charles, there's a notification window on your computer. Could you click OK? Thanks.
Where's that?
It shows the image dropped something, couldn't be converted. Maybe on your, and it's blocking the screen in the center. Thanks.
How is it working now?
Try it again.
Try it again.
Let me see.
Play. Yeah.
Is it working?
Then try clicking. There should be an OK. Like, do you see that it says the image dropped, image.pic couldn't be converted?
There's a picture that couldn't. No, I couldn't see anything. I'm using a Mac, so I don't see.
Okay.
Can you do it in your side?
You must have an image there that you were using as the background or something that can't be added. So.
Okay, let me see. I can do this if it works. I just need to see the chat room so that I can be guided to see what you guys are seeing. Can you see that?
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah,
maybe like, as long as it's mostly text, then this will work out fine for us.
Text.
Yeah, then this will work out fine for us.
That's
Thank you.
good.
Thank you.
See if I can go now. All right.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're talking about East Africa right now, where we're dealing with COVID-19, and of course our health system is not great like what we have in Canada or in the US. We're dealing with locusts. We're dealing with floods. 2 months ago, I was in a place where it was about 3 communities just displaced by a one night of flooding. And ADRA was there. I mean, they're dealing with COVID. They're dealing with all of these things. So, again, Jesus is saying that this is just the beginning of birth pains. I don't know what birth pains is, but I'm sure the mothers that we have in your church would know what that means. I think my wife went through Jewel. I think was the longest. I believe my wife was about 4 hours or 5. I have no idea. But anyway, can you imagine birth pains that long? But all of these, Jesus even downplays the event. Jesus goes, no one knows about the day or hour. No one knows. And yet I have some friends on Facebook that are giving me charts. They have charts saying when Jesus will arrive. Can you imagine? Charts. We're talking about big, beautiful charts with beasts here and pillars here and the sanctuary here. They have it all charted out when Jesus will come. Yeah, Jesus says no one knows about the day or the hour when the end will come. Again, the end is not yet. The lack of, I want to read this, the lack of a specific time or sequence of events warns us not to be distracted by current events or calculations, but to be faithful in everyday duties. So, what then is Jesus's purpose in his end time sermon? If we cannot chart the full sequence of the end time events as we know it as Seventh-day Adventists, then what then is this purpose of prophecy? Matthew 24 verse 42 explicitly reveals this purpose. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. So the key here then is keeping watch, is to keep watch. This is, for me, this is the punchline of Jesus's whole sermon in these two chapters we're looking at. The disciples wanted a series of linear events, just like, you know, Adventist charts that we have seen on Facebook or shared on WhatsApp and other social media. The disciples wanted the future all worked out in details. They wanted to be able to put a date on it. But Jesus said, no, that's not the way it works. Don't follow that kind of linear thinking. The reason I gave you a description of the future is in order for you that you might keep watch. I thought I'd share this a little bit about Adventists, what Adventism means for us as Adventist Christians. Adventist basically reflects our passionate conviction in the nearness of the soon return, the advent of Jesus. Seventh day, of course, refers to the biblical Sabbath, which from creation has always been the seventh day of the week. And that's coming from our website, adventist.org. So being an Adventist is more than just knowing all the signs of the end. It means keeping watch. In other words, living in a certain way because you know and believe that Jesus is coming soon. And I think that should be our focus when we interact with some of our brethren that are so focused on conspiracy theories and other things, that we don't live, you know, knowing that all of the signs of the end is not yet there. The purpose of the sermon of Matthew 24 then is to remind us that we as Seventh-day Adventists need to keep watch. Matthew 24 verse 32, therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. So what is this keeping watch all about? If Matthew 24 and 25 always repeats this theme of keeping watch, what is that all about? What does Jesus mean by keeping watch? Unfortunately, Jesus does not leave us in the dark. The punchline of the sermon is followed by 4 parables, beautiful parables, and it is described in detail what keeping watch is all about. The first of the 4 parables is the unfaithful servant. But the purpose, I'm going to read it. But suppose that servant is wicked and says to himself, my master is staying away a long time, and then he begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with drunkards. The master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, or at an hour he is not aware of. He will cut him to pieces. Can you imagine Jesus saying this? Cut him to pieces, almost like chicken meat or something. And assign him a place with the hypocrites. It would be fascinating if you Google the word hypocrites in the Greek. It's quite a fascinating study, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. That is really, really harsh. So in this story, what is the man's problem? He says to himself, who knows when my master will return? Who cares anyway? As a result, he loses all sense of accountability to his master, and he begins to beat up his fellow servants and treat them harshly. It becomes too tempting to say, since my Lord delays his coming, I can live and do as I please. So in this case, according to my understanding, keeping watch then is the opposite of what this very rude and mean and cruel servant is doing. Keeping watch then has to do with how we treat one another. Somebody said on Sabbath school today earlier, the same point. How do we treat each other? So what does this keeping watch mean in this parable that Jesus taught? Keeping watch means that if we believe that Jesus is coming back, it will be reflected in how we treat people. And how we treat people. Go ahead and move to the next one. Oops. Sorry, I'm trying to move my slides. Oh no. So, short discussion right here. You can either say your things or you can type it on the chat room. And if you're gonna type it or say it, maybe Pierre can get some of the ideas that you have in your mind, because it is important on how we do things. COVID-19 has changed the way we do church. Like, look at right now, we're doing Zoom. Now, as a pastor, if I'm pastoring your church right now, I'm probably thinking, my tithe of the church will go down, because how can I do visitation? How can I do all of these things? The things that I used to do in the church is now thrown out the window. I don't even know what Berman is teaching the theology students, how to do ministry right now. So for a short discussion, COVID-19 has changed the way we do church ministry. Based on the parable that we just have, that we read, how will your church do ministry? How will we treat people when social distancing is in effect? Or if you want to, do a handshake, people have second thoughts and saying, oh, I don't know what you touched last time. I don't want to be really near you. So any ideas? How will you treat people? Okay, online prayer and Bible studies, okay. You need to expound on how that works. We're talking about our COVID-19 pandemic. It has changed a lot of our thinking. For example, in Africa, in Uganda, people are used to giving people hugs. Okay, this is part of their culture, or getting close to each other, or holding hands, or all of these things. This is part of their culture. Even now, you can't even go near them. They're like, oh, no, you're Chinese looking. Maybe you have COVID. Stay away. So it has changed. So how do we do church? How can we, as we prepare for the end times that is coming, and Jesus tells us the first parable is how we treat each other. How does that work? Drive-by visitations and drop-off meals. That's awesome schedule. All right. What else do you have here? I mean, these are very good ideas, and I think you need to discuss this as a church. How you're going to do this? What will be the role of the pastor? What will be the role of the elders? All of these things you need. Intentional small group via Zoom or social distancing, phone calls, scheduled and weekly connecting via social media. That is amazing. Another thing you need to think of, as a church, we do have a mission. How are we going to do evangelism? What type of evangelism? How will we do things? Thinking about all of this, the way COVID has really changed our ministry and our church. So just as some thoughts, I have more questions that you guys can discuss about later. The next one is the second parable is often called the parable of the 10 virgins. Oh yeah, it's right there. So 5 of them were foolish, 5 of them were wise. The foolish ones took their lamps out but did not take any oil with them. The wise, however, took oil along with oil in jars along with their lamps. The bridegroom was long was a long time coming, and they all become sleepy, and in fact, some of them fell asleep. So what we have here, we have 10 young bridesmaids. They are waiting for a wedding. As often the case in Middle East or even in the Philippines, even here in Uganda, you say, you know, our wedding's at 8 o'clock. They will start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The same thing in the Middle East. There's always that delay. I think it is only in the Western Canadian American culture where you say 8 o'clock wedding time, everybody's there at 7:45. But here we have a case where the bridegroom is late. And not just the 5 foolish bridesmaids, but also the 5 wise bridesmaids, they were all sleeping, okay? The parable of the 10 sleeping virgins. These bridesmaids, we can contextualize it or apply it in our own context. We could say that these are Inspire members. This is an Inspire church right here. Sleeping Adventists. And in this case, everybody in Inspire is sleeping, waiting for the bridegroom. Now, in this parable, is there anything wrong with sleeping? No, Jesus says there's nothing wrong with sleeping. They were waiting. Even the ones that have oil in their jars, they were also sleeping. But there is a difference among these sleeping bridesmaids. The wise ones have oil and the foolish ones don't have oil. The difference between the wise and the foolish can be found in the following verses. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house upon the rock. Rain came down, the streams rose, and blew things away against the house, and yet it did not fall because it had its foundations on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like the foolish man who built his house upon the rock. So in Matthew, this is in Matthew 7, the difference between the wise and the foolish is that the wise ones are the doers of his words. In the same way, all the 10 bridesmaids, that we'll put it into our context, you know, as Adventists, but only those who are keeping watch are busy doing the things Jesus told them to do. The foolish bridesmaids had failed to plan for the possibility of the delay of the bridegroom. So in this case, I would say keeping watch then would mean, keeping watch means developing the kind of relationship with Jesus that is sustained even though hopes for Jesus' return are not realized as soon as some expect. So as a church, we are all passionate about Jesus coming, but we know, my grandfather, who is a pastor, preached about Jesus is coming. He's dead now. My dad, who's also a pastor, has been preaching about Jesus is coming. He's still alive, praise the Lord. I'm preaching about Jesus is coming. So how do we plan as a church? How do we plan? How do we sustain our hope? How do we plan for sustainability? So here's another question. What are some methods or ways that will sustain your communal or shared faith in Jesus amidst this pandemic? How are you going to do that? So that's one of the questions that maybe you can discuss in your leadership. But if you'd like to share in the chat room, that would be also good. Because, you know, COVID-19 might be with us for several years, or maybe there's another pandemic that's coming, maybe another form of COVID-21. I don't know what it is, but how do we sustain our shared communal hope in Jesus? Maybe 10 years from now, Jesus is not yet coming. How do we sustain that? Oops, sorry. Let me move my mouse. Another parable here is the parable of the talents. You can read this in your time since we don't have much, but it is in Matthew 24, 45 to 51. But let me sum this story up for you. Basically, the individuals or servants in this parable were to use their abilities to increase the value of the money their king had given them. The individual or servant who buried his talent failed to use his ability to do what the king asked him to do. So in this parable, keeping watch then means to use God-given abilities to the fullest while waiting for the end to come. Again, another question that you can discuss amongst yourself or share in the chat is, what does this mean today amidst our pandemic? How can we as a church use the abilities that we have to the fullest, to grow the church as our mission is? How are we going to do that? Anyone? Share an example or two. I see Shine. Be available, receptive, and follow the Holy Spirit's prompting. Remembering church is where 2 or 3 are gathered. That is awesome. That's a good comment here from Ate Ching. Wait on the Lord and not on the date. Pierre can make a good meme out of that. No excuse to sit in the back benches now. Do something. Exactly. Well, right now we don't have even any back benches because we don't meet as a church, right? So again, as leaders in your church, maybe do a spiritual test, a spiritual gifts evaluation. What are the talents we have in the church? How do we grow our church amidst this pandemic? Are we going to only target those that are available online, or are we targeting our neighbors? Are we targeting our friends that are on social media? How? These are the things that we can do as we evaluate our gifts. Okay, do something that is fear. So the fourth parable then, so let me move to the last one, provides for me, this is the way I understood it. The fourth parable provides the conclusion or the climax of Jesus's sermon on prophecy. And I'm going to spend a lot of time reading this because this is where my passion is. I hope you don't mind. So for me, this is the climax of Jesus's meaning of what he means by keeping watch, all right, as we wait for the end. And he tells a parable of the sheep and the goats. And Jesus says, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his throne in heavenly glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people from one another as a shepherd separates the sheep and the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Next one. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and invited you in, needing clothes and clothed you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? The king will reply, I tell you the truth. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine or sisters, you did for me. Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. That's really harsh. For I was hungry and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison and you did not look after me. They also will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you? He will reply, I tell you the truth. Whatever you did not do for the one of the least of this, you did not do for me. Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. To the sheep, Jesus says, you visited me when I was sick or in prison. You clothed me when I was naked. You fed me when I was hungry. You gave me drink when I was thirsty. But the sheep answered, when? You never did any of that. The king replies, I tell you the truth, whatever you did for one of the least of my brothers, you also did for me. This is the conclusion of what Jesus says, what keeping watch means, what keeping watch is all about. Keeping watch then means treating people as though they were Christ himself. How will your faith community apply this during the pandemic? Yeah, I keep going back to this pandemic because it has really changed the way we think as a church. How will we treat people as though they were Christ? How? Shines as a church, I think it's paramount that we intentionally pray in solitude as couples, as families, friends, prayers, partners together daily. That's an excellent idea. Any contribution? How will your faith community apply this during the pandemic? To treat other people as though they were Christ. Anyone? You can, if you don't want to type, you can speak, and then Pierre will take note of that and maybe bring it to a leadership discussion. For example, you know, it is so easy for us to think as an individual, but I'm talking about a faith community. I'm talking about it as a church. I'm talking about systems that you have in Inspire Ministries. Do you have systems in place? Do you have processes in place that will intentionally treat people as though they were Christ? For example, right now there's a lot of I don't know in your church, but I'm talking in my church in Kampala right now. My wife goes to a local church, a Uganda church, and many of these church members have lost their livelihoods. They haven't worked for 4 months. Now we're talking about a faith community that is looking after their members who has not worked for 4 months. Do you have any systems in place as Inspire Church, as Inspire Ministry that will take care, that will treat people as though they were Christ, just like the parable that we have read? I'm talking about a system, a process that you have to intentionally treat people as though they were Christ according to the parable. So that when one of your member has no work for several months, or I don't know what it is in Canada now because we've been away for so long. So I don't know much of the context that you have in this pandemic. But I'm asking the question.
Just want to see
anyone
you to pass it.
Please speak up, and Pierre will moderate. So I'm talking about systems. If you don't have a system and it's in place, then it's okay. This is the place where we can discuss things. Anyone?
Hey, Pastor
Personal
Charles.
ministries, informally, yes, but not systematically. So please, when you say things, expound on it, on how you can think as a system. Let me give you one example. I think it was Dennis today, who was it? Or Ate Ching, that gave an example about the it's Kuya Linson that said that maybe we can learn from the Jehovah's Witnesses. Was that you, Kuya Linson, that mentioned that? Who was that in Sabbath school today that says maybe we can learn from the Jehovah's Witnesses?
Dennis.
Who said that? It was Dennis, on how they do their evangelism. Was that the comment today? Now, okay. So, do you know that the Mormon Church, they have a system. They have a system on how to take care of their people. Now, I always wondered about our church. I mean, we have our own prophet. We believe in the Old Testament, the New Testament. We have the writings of Ellen White. And yet we don't think systematically when we say, how do we treat people as though they were Christ? So for example, the Mormon church, if somebody in their congregation lost a job, okay, the whole church will say, you know what? You have lost your job. For the next 3 months, the church will give you what you have earned for the next 3 months while you look for a job. They don't even go around looking for love offerings. They don't do those things because they think that if you go around asking for donations and love offerings, that means you didn't plan for it. You're not planning for sustainability. You didn't plan for emergency. You're only working as if, you know, miraculously God is going to intervene every time. No, they're thinking, okay, if there is somebody in our congregation that is going to be affected by this pandemic, at least we can provide something for them. So what do they do systematically? They say every month they have to fast 1 day a week. And that meal that they're going to have, they're going to give to the church. So if I have a family of 5 and each meal would cost me $5, I multiply that and I give that day of meal to the church as my contribution to those that is going to need it when the time comes. So that's what I'm saying. Is it is a systematic way of thinking of how do we treat people as though they were Christ.
Charles.
If you're looking for, yes,
Charles,
somebody
so
please.
we started already that system. We are starting. So the first,
excellent. Let me hear it, because I haven't heard that.
Yeah. The first, what we did was to withdraw our rental from Lutheran because it's a huge amount that we're paying. And so Pastor Matt led us through this decision, and we prayed about it. And so far, everybody agreed that we will stop renting a building, and the money, we will use it for personal ministries. And so that's where Vanessa and Shine are getting money from their drive-by. And that started during the COVID, And so we are now getting more money, and eventually we want to become really an influential church that we can even provide the help to Uganda, to your people. We want to outreach.
That's good. That is very good. Yes.
Because we want to we want to engage. To us, we discovered that church is relationship. That church, we need to engage. We need to relate to the people, to their needs, just like what Jesus did when he was on earth.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that is beautiful. That is inspiring. I love hearing that. And I wish you can share more stories about that. And the thing is, when you think of a system, it is not dependent on Shine. It's not dependent on Ate Ching or Kuya Linson, because if you guys go, the system is in place. So whoever comes in and takes over leadership, the system is already set in place. So I'm really encouraged to hear that. There's a comment here from Kuya Linson, which I would like to expose a little bit. And he says that we are cozy because we have ADRA, Sage, Dorcas Society, Love Offering, etc. That is so true. You know, sometimes to get out of the guilt that we have, we just say, okay, well, I'm already giving to ADRA, I'm already giving to Sage. They're already doing work that my church was supposed to be doing. But that could be an excuse, as what Kuya Linson is saying, is that we get cozy, we get comfortable and say, wait a minute. A local church also has its own mission. We also have our own mission as a church, as a local church. I would really encourage leadership. There's one book that I would love for you to do, to Shine Cozy, aka Rebuke. There's one book that I challenge leadership for Inspire to read. And if you can read it 1 chapter a week for the next, I don't know, next many weeks. Please read the chapter on Ministry of Healing by Ellen White. Read 1 chapter a week. Read the chapter and then come up with questions on Zoom, on email, on Facebook, wherever that is. And let me tell you, when I was pastoring up in Terrace, that has been my manual for church ministries. I just read that book. I mean, it gives you so many ideas. It'll give you so many inspiring ways on how to reach and how to treat people as though they were Christ. Monday ministry. Yes, Lyra, absolutely. I love that book. My second book that I would highly recommend is Acts of the Apostles. If you're talking about the purpose of the church, if you're talking about evangelism, caring for people, ministry of healing, I would recommend that. If you want to do church business, Acts of the Apostles is amazing. Shine is saying Monday Zoom small group. Oh, you're doing that already, Ministry of Healing?
No,
Every Monday?
I'm suggesting it right now.
Oh, you're suggesting. But let me tell you, it will inspire you so much to answer this last question, the conclusion of Jesus' sermon, how to treat people like Christ. It will give you a lot of ideas over there. So let me just wrap up. I think I've babbled a lot here. Keeping watch, that is where we are. So let me end here. As Adventists, I would say that we have a lot to say about paying tithes and what else? Studying our lesson quarterly, which are good things, or having family worship, keeping Sabbath and going to church on a regular basis, in this case, Zoom. Such activities have been, at times, other churches, they made it as the testing truths for them to join the community. But in this case, Matthew offers a testing truth that is different from what I just mentioned, like Sabbath school or earrings or paying tithes or, these things. For Matthew, he says right here that to believe that Jesus is coming soon, we should have an impact on how we treat one another. How we treat one another. That is so basic. I mean, as much as I would love to see Jesus telling us how to keep the Sabbath, but he didn't really spend much on that either. Jesus and his disciples spent a lot of energy in discussing how do we treat one another. It is quite fascinating. And let me just go through what Paul has written right here. I mean, look at this. Love one another, be devoted to one another, honor one another, live in harmony with one another, stop passing judgment on one another, accept one another, instruct one another, greet one another, serve one another, be patient with one another, be kind, do not lie. What else? Forgive one another, teach one another, encourage, don't grumble, pray for one another. I mean, it just goes on and on. So, as Adventists, it is not enough for us to know the truth. It is part of our framework. We'd like to know the future. We have all of these charts that we have. When the tsunami in Thailand came, we had it all charted out. I mean, when I say we, I'm generalizing, but we have fringes in Adventism that are so loud that they made all of these events as if that it is the time that Jesus is coming. Now we have 5G, and now we have pandemic, all of these things. But it is not enough to know the future. It is not enough to be even right in matters of theology. The central purpose of prophecy is not to satisfy our curiosity about the future, but to teach us how to live right now. And how do we live right now? Is to treat people like as if they are Jesus. And if we as we remember his sermon, therefore keep watch, to treat others the way Jesus has treated each one of us. And that is the purpose of prophecy. So I am done. So unless you want to discuss other matters concerning the 4 parables on how we do as a church, I will leave it up to Pierre as the host, Lyra, to moderate the discussion if you want to discuss some more. But anyway, thanks for inviting me. I am by myself with 1 cat and 4 dogs. 3 cats and 4 dogs. And this week has been very rough on me especially. 4 of our pets died this week. Can you imagine? So I've been burying 1 pet every single day, calling Jaden, trying to comfort Jaden because this is her pet. She's spent a lot of time with these pets. And now I have 2 pets that are sick. So tomorrow I'll probably bury them both, or maybe I'll bury one and Monday is another one. So anyway, it's quite challenging, but I enjoy meeting with you all, seeing that Inspire is working, and Inspire is doing innovative ways to reach the community. I can't wait to see where will you be at in a year from now or two. But anyway, I am done. Lyra, back to you.
Charles, thank you so much, Charles. Thank you for accepting. And
Yes, you're welcome.
our prayers for your comfort.
Thank you so much. By the way, the pets that died are our chickens. We have chickens, and they came from an egg, and then they hatched. And Jaden took care of these chickens, like and my wife. It's amazing how they do things, you know. But you might be wondering why are we having all of these chickens? You know, why are we crying for these chickens? And but you know, living as a missionary is so challenging, and we need to find an escape. And sometimes these chickens, they give us the joy, you know, the little joy, like you come home from work and you're all stressed out, and all of a sudden you're greeted by like 7 chickens running to you in the door and all of those things. So it is part of our culture as missionaries. And for Jaden, especially for Jaden, she gets into it, feeding them in the morning, in the evening, carrying them, petting them, all of these things. So to lose those, it was quite sad for us. But anyway, this is a good escape as well. I am done again. Thank you so much, Lyra. Back to you.
All right.